yesterday.
Yeah, I cut over the mass, and I told you it was kind of adhered to the skin, and it's called blunt debridement. I kind of just shelled it out. It wasn't that dramatic at all. I kind of just shelled it out. I can't try to figure a way to relay it.
Well, yesterday you had said to me that it was hard to get out and you really had to pull on it.
On the skin was pretty attached to it, but underneath it was just kind of we stick scissors and then we open them. So we put them in closed and we kind of just open them. You kind of just tear tissue. I didn't cut much at all. We kind of tear tissue because of bleeding, and kind of just shelled it out, almost like pulling a walnut out of a shell, if you will.
Okay.
But yeah, the skin on top was pretty adhered. Like that's where I had trouble. Normally the skin kind of slides and it's much easier, but the skin was pretty
Okay. Well,
adhered.
So last night when we brought him home, that like literally my husband got him home last night, and he called me like 20 minutes later after he had been home, and he said, "Where are you at?" And I was already way in Kansas, and he was like, because he had all 3 kids and the dog just started bleeding profusely. Like we have pictures of it, of like blood bubbling through the stitches, like bad bleeding. We had blood everywhere. And so then my mom had to rush home because she was closest to take the kids, and then we couldn't get a hold of you guys. There was no option to like get a hold of somebody after hours or anything. So we took him down to, what was it called?
We got the report. Yeah.
Yeah. And pretty much they said he was in very bad shape, that there had been muscles cut that weren't put back together. He was bleeding. He was bleeding out from arteries that weren't.
No.
Yeah, and she said he was in very, very bad shape. And it was bad. He was in bad shape because he was bleeding out everywhere. His head was so swollen by the time we got him there. Like it was life-threatening. It most definitely was.
No, but none of that is the case. I mean, I can tell you, I didn't cut muscle. I'm as gentle as I can.
But there was definitely muscle cut. Like she told us there was. She had to literally sew muscles back together.
There was no cut. There was muscles torn.
Why?
But no.
Why were their muscles torn? Why were their muscles torn?
To remove the mass that was kind of stuck on the muscle.
How? I mean, you told me it was stuck to the skin. I mean, why didn't we know that this was more serious than it was?
It really wasn't. It really wasn't. He did not bleed. He did not bleed much in surgery, and he did not bleed throughout the day. He rested quietly. We never cleaned him. We never cleaned him from surgery until you took him home. There was no bleeding. I don't know if he hit it on something. There was no bleeding here. He went for a potty walk. He came in. He rested. I mean, when he went home.
I mean, the stitches were not torn. Like, we have pictures of the stitches in perfectly placed. You can just see blood bubbling out from each of them. And then, like, the whole way to the vet, he was bleeding. My husband had to, like, wrap something around his head to get the blood to clot because he could not keep him from bleeding. And then when they got there and they put him up on the table and the vet kind of, like, touched it, the blood clot bursted and it literally squirted blood across the room.
Really?
Like,
None of that happened.
He was bleeding so bad. Very, very. We have pictures of blood all over our garage, blood all over my husband's truck. Like, it was very, very bad.
I tell you, Amy, I'm not hiding anything. It did not bleed like that. It did not bleed profusely in the least.
Okay, so when there were muscles torn, like you said, how come they weren't sewn back together? Because nothing on the inside was sewn back together, they said. It was only sewn back together on the outside. And they wanted to know why it was done that way.
It was too tight. There wasn't the edge. So a lot of times we sew subcutaneous tissue together when there's when the tissue allows for it. There wasn't, and I considered it, and I looked at it and I was like, well, there's nothing really. There wasn't anything to sew, and there just wasn't. It was kind of a hole once I took the mass out, and it was not bleeding. So I thought,
yeah, she said that it must have been very, very deep because there was a big dead space. And like, but you didn't act like it was very big or it was that much of a concern, but she said it must have been big because she could tell you went for margins.
No. I took the mass. I did not take extra. I know what she's referring to. Yes, some cancerous masses, we try and dig wider. You try and get any microscopic projections. It was just the mass. I literally was just in there gently dissecting. My technician can tell you, she sat there and watched me. I gently dissected and I got the mass out, and that was it. It was the mass. It was a hole, but it wasn't. I was not aggressive. I was not.
Like, why was it a hole though? I don't understand that.
Well, that was just the hole that the mass was in.
So, like, how big was the actual mass?
It was maybe 2.5 centimeters wide. We talked about that. It was like bigger than a quarter. And then, like, standing up, I'm trying to think of an analogy. Like, I mean, if it was standing on its side, it was kind of dome-shaped. And at its widest, it was like 1.5 centimeters. I mean, it was in. What you were feeling was just the tip of the dome, if you would. Like,
yeah.
That was what we felt.
Yeah.
So I had to go to get the whole thing out.
I mean, do you think that maybe we shouldn't have removed it? Because she's telling us that, like, she hopes he makes a full recovery, but, like, the muscles in his face may be damaged. Like, he may not be able to move the muscles in his face correctly anymore.
No, it's gonna take time. The face has a ton of innervation, and so anytime there's any trauma to the face, yes, like the fine motor might be a little damaged.
Well, she's just talking about like the muscles that weren't put back together, right?
There was no muscles cut. There wasn't.
So what were you saying about when you said that, when I asked, do you think maybe we shouldn't have removed it? Like, when you got in there, were you kind of like, I don't know about this, or?
No, I didn't at all think it was cancerous. I thought this is firm, and it was the right thing to do because we didn't want it to get any bigger for sure.
So you didn't think it was cancerous?
No, and I told you I thought it was more of a localized follicle in reaction. We talked about having him clipped, and I said, I wonder if it's more of just the hair follicles got irritated, and that was why I couldn't pull the skin off.
So maybe we should have just left it if it was just a hair follicle.
And that's, we wouldn't have known without looking either.
But maybe when you got in there, if you thought that, then maybe we should just not have removed it.
And we won't know till the report comes back. But that was my impression, is why is the skin so adhered? And then when you mentioned the clipping, I thought maybe the hair follicles got irritated, and that's why the skin kind of glued itself down, if you will. Like, I think it was more of a superficial, like more in the skin layer rather than down deep. But I mean, we wouldn't have known that till I went to remove it and was like, why is the skin so adhered?
Yeah,
and
but I mean,
no way to predict that.
Maybe there was, if you thought that, then we should have just closed it back up and not removed it.
Well, there's no way to know without the pathologist report. Looking with the history I had, nobody had gotten mast cell tumors from it or soft tissue cells from it. So I just thought it was really weird that it was so adhered, and then you mentioned the clipping thing, and so I thought maybe it's a follicle thing. It got better with antibiotics, but then it also didn't resolve completely. So this was a complete resolution of the problem for sure.
Okay, and like, when can we get the pathologist report? I mean, could you call today and maybe see what they're saying?
It'll probably be Friday, maybe Thursday. It kind of just depends on how many they get. I had a dog today. That result came back, and I think that one probably took 10 days.
Okay,
So
well, like, it literally costed us almost $3,000 last night.
I can imagine that was, yeah, they got pretty expensive in the things that they had recommended.
It was very traumatic. My husband
I believe
still,
so. When I read the report, I was feeling for you. I was like, oh my gosh,
he was bleeding everywhere. There's blood everywhere. Like, my husband showed me the trash can of paper towels where he was trying to clot the blood. And, like, he had ended up having to wrap something around his head and sit there and hold it real tight for a little bit to get it to clot, just so he could get him in the car to drive him there. Like, my husband said on the way there, he had him in the front seat. He said he was literally, like, he had real tears coming out of his eyes.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, it was serious.
I felt it's like, yeah, I called you. Yeah, so, when I read the report, I was like, how the heck did this happen?
And we couldn't get a hold of you guys or anything. I mean, is there any way you could take care of this bill?
I will leave a message for my office manager, but I mean, I can tell you, we watched him, all of us. He was here in the general treatment area. He rested quietly. There was none of that.
I mean, I don't know if it was when, like, he woke up from anesthesia and the blood vessel didn't, and then it just started. Yeah, they told us last night that his head was bleeding internally.
I mean, there was blood under the skin.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, and, like, it just kept getting bigger. By the time, like, we have a picture of him from when Brett first picked him up, and the stitches look completely normal. And then my son took a picture of him because my little boy is the one that went. They were all outside, and Goose was in the garage. In his pen, there's like nothing in his pen for him to get into.
Okay.
And he had the cone on. And my son went inside to grab a drink, and he noticed Goose was bleeding. And he said, "Dad," he said, "I think something's wrong with Goose." And so Brett ran from the shop to the garage, and then that's when my son took a picture of the stitch with his iPad, and it literally, you can see the stitches are perfectly all in place. He didn't rip any stitches. You can just see blood puddling out from between each stitch, and his head is getting bigger.
Really? I mean, I have no explanation for how things changed.
Yeah.
You saw, you have pictures of when he left here. He looked like that all day. I don't have a great explanation for how dramatically that.
I mean, maybe when he got up walking around and stuff, it started pooling more.
Possibly. I mean, he did go potty here. Yeah.
So, I mean,
he did go potty.
I mean, I don't know. All I know is what they told us last night, that he was in very, very bad shape, and there was lots of things left undone internally.
No, and I do feel that was very wrong of them to say those things. None of that. I did not cut muscle. I shelled it out. It's literally like removing the seed of a walnut. Yes, it was a little more difficult, more like a walnut than maybe an almond. But it came out like, there you go, an almond. A full-sized almond, almost. A little bigger than a full-sized almond is what the mass itself was.
Yeah.
So, yes, there was that much space from the mass that was empty. But there was no cut muscles. There was no large cut.
But you said that there was torn muscles, that you had to tear it from the muscle.
I did shell through them. Yes, I did peel them away gently, as if you were sticking your hand through a cobweb, if you will. You kind of just stick in, and you kind of just gently tear stuff. But exactly, you don't go cutting because it will bleed.
But if the muscles were torn, I mean, just why weren't they repaired?
It was very gentle, and it wasn't like, I mean, it minuscule. We're talking like mild tearing of what we call fascial planes between muscle fibers. They weren't like cut in like a steak. It was more just like peeling the fat off a steak. It was kind of just that texture that things were pried away, if you will.
Okay.
And so, yes, there's some gentle microscopic tearing, but it wasn't like I was, pulling with two hands against each other. It was with fingertips.
And,
it wasn't with
like,
a blade.
You didn't feel the need to sew anything internally also?
I didn't. There was not bleeding. Yes, I frequently sew subcutaneous tissue, we call it, in a spay. We'll sew the body wall, and then we'll sew the tissue underneath, and then we sew the skin. There wasn't bleeding, and there wasn't... No, it did not look at all what they described. And I wish I could simulate what I saw.
Okay.
To you.
Well, could you just talk to your manager or your office manager about maybe covering that bill, because we were not prepared for any of that. I mean, we thought this was not even going to be a big deal at all.
Right.
We just, I mean, this is just all a huge shock and traumatic thing.
I understand.
And like Goose is at home now. And
hopefully he's feeling good today.
He's in his pen. He has a cone. He has 2 drains sticking out of his face. We have to literally give him tranquilizing pills to keep him calm, to not mess with these drains. We have to keep him calm for 5 days, and then we have to go get the drains
you can bring him here for that.
Taken out. And like, it's just this is like so stressful with 3 little kids too.
I understand. Yes, it has definitely morphed into way more than any of us anticipated.
Yeah.
I feel for you. I believe me. I feel compassionately for you. Like, that's not at all what I would have anticipated this would have gone. I would have prepared you. I would have said this.
Yeah.
I would have.
That's what, like, I'm just so confused, because I'm
deceptive.
like, I even have on my message yesterday of you guys saying everything went well. He's out of surgery, and I'm just like, I'm flabbergasted.
And you saw him when your husband saw him. I mean, he looked great. He walked out of here. I was like, oh, looks good. Cool. Go home and be quiet.
I don't know what happened.
I agree with you. I am just as perplexed, honestly. But I do think some of what they told you is a bit far-fetched. I feel like that was a little bit dramatic, honestly, in my opinion. And I know what it looked like. And that's the thing, is once there's a mess, it's kind of like going in after the house collapses. You're like, oh, where did it start? Who knows? Like, there's a lot of mess.
Yeah.
So I know what it looked like, though, when I was done, and it did not look like what they told you, and I can assure you of that. And I would have no reason to tell you otherwise.
Okay. Well, could you just let me know what your manager says?
I will. I'm off tomorrow. I'll see her on Thursday. So is that okay if I touch base with you on Thursday?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I will touch base with you, though, Abby.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.